All right, good morning, U.S. history. Today is Thursday, April. Gotta check the date. 38% charge. No, it is April 16th. Uh, this is U.S. history. Welcome to the beginning of Unit 5, the 1990s until today. So very obviously, Unit 5 covers way more time than any of the previous units this semester. That's why it's going to take a little bit longer to get through. So previously, we've been doing about 3 weeks per unit. Now we're going to be looking at about adding another week, 4 weeks in there. So obviously, if you have any questions or things pop up as we go, please shoot me an email. And if you would like to schedule a one-on-one time after today, that would be fine too. We can set that up. So just let me know. The point of today is to kind of discuss these lecture notes. There's not a lot of notes in here. There's mostly graphics. And I think that the wise amongst you would view this before and during the modern presidency activity that is quote unquote due tomorrow. I'll talk more about that due date, but that the project looking at the last 6 or 7 election cycles from 1992 to 2016, that's going to be the point of your work this week. Okay, so the learning target, describing political shifts in recent decades and explain how they relate to previous decades and predict changes in the future. So all of history really is looking at the past in order to make some predictions about the future. So really what we're going to see is these shifts from conservatism to progressive liberalism. We're going to see shifts from Republicans to Democrats and just kind of how it goes back and forth really over the past 20 some years. So we've already hinted a little bit about this in previous chapters, but I'm going to hit it again. In the election of 1992 was between incumbent President George H.W. Bush, Republican, and a little-known governor of Arkansas by the name of Bill Clinton. He's the Democrat. These guys were running for the presidency in 1992, H.W. Bush coming out of the first Iraq War, that there was a recession going on, that he was having to raise taxes. So he was really in a tough spot as an incumbent Republican president. But then along comes this guy, Ross Perot, Texas oil man, billionaire tycoon, enters the race as an independent candidate. And this is when we're talking about, again, the spoiler effect. We looked previously, did Ross Perot's 19 million votes pull some support away from George H.W.? Very likely he did. So we ended up here with this electoral college map here in 1992. You can see the blue states go to Bill Clinton, the red states going to H.W. Bush. Bill Clinton wins the election in 1992. Thus, George H.W. Bush is a one-term president. The reason why we focus so much on this, again, goes back to this guy, Ross Perot. Okay, why was it an election that we continue to pay attention to? You had a third party or independent candidate pulling support away from a major party candidate and in reality shifting support towards, in this case, Bill Clinton, the Democrat. So now we get to 1996, fast forward 4 years. Bill Clinton is running for re-election. He's running against a very popular Republican senator from I think it's Kansas, Bob Dole. Bob Dole runs a campaign. He becomes a Republican nominee. And Bill Clinton increases support. So again, you can see here, red states going to Republican candidate Bob Dole, blue states going to Bill Clinton. Something to really pay attention to as you're going through these activities and through these charts is looking at what states have changed from one election cycle to another. You can see that, Bill Clinton is pulling in some of these southern states. Clinton's pulling support there as the Democratic candidate. But you can see Arizona flipped from 92 to 96. So that would be something to kind of keep in mind as you're looking at these different election cycles, is where these states start to change. So now we get to the election of 2000. Bill Clinton is now a very successful 2-term president. He is impeached. He is found not guilty of the charges of perjury. He remains in office and leaves with very high approval ratings. Very, very popular president at the end of the 90s there. Having lived through that point, people had jobs, people were making money. You kind of were, all things are going up in 1999, 2000. So now Bill Clinton's vice president for 8 years, this guy by the name of Al Gore. Okay. He is running for the Democrat. He wins the Democratic nomination. And this guy here, George H.W.'s son, one of his sons, George W. Bush, former governor of Texas, owner of the Texas Rangers, owned a baseball team. He was more of a businessman, and they ran for election in 2000. Why is this one of those elections that we talked about? It all comes down to Florida. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about this, I believe next week. We have this on the schedule for next week. But they really, on election night, we didn't have an answer as to who won this election in 2000. Some people had called Florida and their 25 electoral votes for Al Gore, which would have given Gore the victory. They pulled that back and said, no, we need to, the votes are too close, and especially some counties, specific counties within Florida there. So for some time, Florida had not had an official vote count. They were recounting all of the votes, and it wasn't until a little bit later in November that the Supreme Court ended the recount vote in their Supreme Court decision of Bush v. Gore, declaring George W. Bush the winner of Florida. Thus, Bush gets the 25 electoral votes, which puts him over that 270 threshold, thus giving George W. Bush victory in 2000. It was as close of an election as any. I mean, you're looking at less than 500,000 votes separating those two. Al Gore did have the popular vote. George W. Bush won the electoral vote there. So that's a big one. 92 for the spoiler effect. 2000 for Bush v. Gore in the state of Florida. So now we get to the election of 2004. George W. Bush has served in office for 4 years. We've gone through 9/11. He had the peak of popularity, somewhere around 90% approval ratings in the weeks post 9/11. And we start into the war in Afghanistan, later into the war in Iraq. George W. Bush here running for re-election in 2004 against Massachusetts Senator John Kerry. I know we watched some ads previously. We'll go back and review a few of those. John Kerry is not successful in his attempt to win the presidency in 2004. And you can see by this election here that George W. Bush picked up a lot more votes in 2004, and it was over. It was pretty decided. There were a lot of folks saying like, oh, there's no way George W. Bush is going to win more states, and he absolutely came through. You can look here where it was close before. He's picking up more states. That's a sea of red there in 2004. So now it takes us to 2008. So George W. Bush, 2 terms in office, can't run again. Now we have an open field for a little-known senator from Illinois named Barack Obama. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton running a very lengthy race, or primary race, in 2008. John McCain, senator from Arizona, becomes the Republican candidate in 2008. And you can see here that Barack Obama was able to pick up, especially states here like Colorado and New Mexico. He'd be able to pick up Nevada, Florida. You're picking up these big states with big electoral vote counts. Barack Obama wins, not in a landslide in any means, but it was a victory that was declared that evening in 2008. So now we go 4 years later, Barack Obama running for re-election in 2012 against their Governor Mitt Romney. Okay, now Senator Mitt Romney from Utah. So Romney is still in the government these days. In 2012, Romney was not successful in defeating Barack Obama for re-election. Again, you look at some of those same states. I don't think he was able to flip any of the states, but I think he kind of maintained voter turnout. Thus, he was a 2-term president. Now we get to 2016. We have Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and the 2016 vote count. So you look at these states here: Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida. Like, these are states that went to Barack Obama in 2012 and in 2008. Trump was successful in flipping these states by razor margins, but able, because we're in a winner-take-all system, picks up all of these electoral votes. So Hillary Clinton, though she gets the popular vote, is defeated in the Electoral College through these Midwest states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania. So before we get to that, again, you want to look at, if we go back to the learning target, it talks about shifts. So in 92, we bring in 8 years of a Democrat in office, okay? Wins in 96, 2000, we bring in 8 years of a Republican in office. 2008, we bring in 8 years of a Democrat in office. 2016, we're in year 3.5 of a first term. So it's going to be really interesting to see. If we know that in 2020, Donald Trump running for re-election and the presumed nominee for the Democrats being Joe Biden, it's going to be real interesting to see how this plays out. If you were making predictions, how do you predict that this election cycle would turn out? That's kind of where your brain needs to be thinking. If we've looked at Clinton, George W., Barack Obama, now back to Donald Trump, you're seeing this being a cycle. So this is the activity. It's posted on Canvas. You can turn it in on Canvas. This is, even though this says you can work with one other person, I think I've changed everything else to say this is a solo project. Out of here. Sorry, guys, I'm pulling up this activity. Okay, so here is the activity. It's on Canvas. For each election cycle, what you need to do is 92, 96, 2000, 04, 08, 12, 16. You need to answer these 4 questions for each of those election cycles. So who are the candidates and what party do they represent? We've already given you that information. So what was each candidate's platform? That's going to take some research. So what were the things that they were running on? Was it lowering taxes? Was it increasing military spending? Was it healthcare reform? You know, what are those things that the candidate was running on? What were they using to try to convince people to vote for them? What was the result of the election? Was it close? Was it controversial? So that's where you can go into those electoral college maps. You can go and look up the election online. Some of those are going to be close. 92's close. 2000's close. 2016's close. Those are going to be your close ones. And then why do historians believe that the winning candidate was elected? Maybe not just historians, but what was conventional wisdom saying? Like, why did Bill Clinton win in 1992? Okay, what about his campaign? Was it he was young? Was it, the spoiler effect with Ross Perot? Was it, how he was appealing to the youth vote? Like, what about Barack Obama? Why would historians say he won in 2008? So that's going to be kind of your research piece. I gave you some, resources here, but obviously you can use anything that you find. 2 ways to approach it. Some people do it on a document. Some people do it on a slideshow or a PowerPoint, and they just kind of break it down that way. It's easy to kind of isolate all that information. However you best want to present that information is fine with me. And then you can submit it to Canvas when you're complete. I know I've already spoken to the people on the live, joining us live today, but if you're viewing this on YouTube later today or whenever, take your time on this. Please, please, please don't rush. If you don't get it done today and you don't get it done tomorrow, that's fine. Take the weekend, do it on Monday, turn it in sometime next week. Like, I would much rather you take the time and do it well rather than rush through just to get it in. Because if it's really, really rushed, I'm probably just going to kick it back to you and say, you could do better than this. So again, you're looking at all the elections, 92 to 2016, answering those 4 prompts in whatever version works best for you. So I'm going to stop sharing here. Couple questions that I had coming up before I turn it over to the people joining us live. First thing, guys, again, this is going to be about a 4-week unit. It'll take us to about the 2nd week of May. There will not be a cumulative final exam in US history this semester, but be on the lookout starting around that second week of May, kind of choose your own adventure final project. There's going to be quite a few options for you to kind of demonstrate learning over the past semester. Um, that also being said, in the words of grading, I'm going to keep the incomplete marking. If I mark anything missing, exempt, like some teachers wanted us to go to, it disappears from your view and you can't see it anymore. So it doesn't really change anything on your end. You're going to continue to see it marked as incomplete. So those are the big things. Vocab, make sure you get that turned in. You can view this video and use this to help you on the Modern Campaign and Modern Presidency project. I'd like to see it, today or tomorrow. If you don't get to it this weekend, get to it on Monday or Tuesday next week. Just kind of keep up with it. Obviously, if any of your situations and learning changes and I need to be aware of that, please, please, please let me know. And if you have any questions and we need to set up a one-on-one chat, we can do that as well. So before I sign off, any questions from the Peanut Gallery before we wrap up? All right. Hearing none, seeing none. I'm going to pause recording here for today, Thursday, April 14th. Is it still the 14th? I think so. We never know anymore. No, it's the 16th. Duh, it's at the bottom of my computer. Thursday, April 16th. Appreciate your time, U.S. History. Be safe, be well, hug your families, wash your hands, and I will catch you at the beginning of next week. Be on the lookout Monday for the schedule and all the Zoom times posted there. Have a great day. Stay warm, Titans.